When I was a doctoral student in Paris back in the late 1980s and early 1990s, I used to occasionally sort of fantasize about the Paris of the 13th century, when my hero, Thomas Aquinas, was living and working in Paris, when Notre Dame was being completed, when the Sainte-Chapelle was being built, and I would say, what a golden age that must have been. And of course, at the time I was in Paris, when the high culture was characterized by a lot of skepticism and all that, sort of bland and bored modernism. There was something wonderful about this time when high intellectual achievement, and the faith came together. So I guess I could be excused for hankering after a little bit. But Woody Allen's new movie, Midnight in Paris, is a kind of affectionate mocking of just this tendency to look back at the past as a golden age, and therefore a refusal to live dramatically in the present. His movie centers around a fellow named Gil Pender, who's a writer of kind of third-rate Hollywood movies, who longs to write a great novel, like those of F. Scott Fitzgerald and Ernest Hemingway and Gertrude Stein, his literary heroes. The movie opens and Gil is in Paris with his fiancée and her parents. And they're making the rounds of Paris, but he's much less taken by modern Paris. And he's sort of hankering after the Roaring '20s, when his great heroes were striding the stage in the City of Lights. Well, one night, he's just kind of wandering alone through Paris, and he's kind of bored, he's unhappy. He reclines on a little set of stairs, and then he sees this automobile from the 1920s coming up the road. People gesture from it, they beckon to him to come in, and he's puzzled, but he says, well, okay, I'll join them. He joins them, and there they are in the outfits of the 1920s, and they take him to a party. He sees all these people, and the music going on, and over to him comes a woman who says, hi, I'm Zelda. And then her husband comes over, he goes, hi, I'm Scott Fitzgerald. So he thinks, well, it's a joke, it's a costume party, or something's going on. And then he sees this fellow at the piano singing a Cole Porter song. It's Cole Porter. And then in comes this dashing young man with a black mustache, and they all call him Hemingway. And so he realizes he's entered some kind of weird time warp, and he's actually in the Paris of the 1920s. Well, he was captivated by all these people. He goes back 3 or 4 times, and he meets, beside the ones I mentioned, almost all the major players of that time, all the great artists and writers and so on. He meets Picasso, he meets Gertrude Stein, he meets Man Ray, he meets Dali, he meets T.S. Eliot. And kind of the joke of the movie is that all these people that he runs into act and speak perfectly according to type. So as Hemingway speaks, it's really funny, anyone that's read Hemingway, he speaks in that kind of clear, chiseled, crystalline prose of his novels. He's also always spoiling for a fight. He wants to get into a boxing match with somebody. Picasso is all, stormy intensity. Gertrude Stein is, the mother hen of all these writers and artists. Dali he meets, and Dali is all weird and intense, just as you'd expect him to be. They all act according to type. And at first, I must say, when I was watching, I thought, is this kind of cartoonish? Is he painting the past in all these primary colors? Then I sort of caught on what he's doing is mocking our tendency to look back at the past in this very idealized way, to see just these grand archetypes. There's a wonderful joke in the movie because he meets a young woman who's a mistress of Picasso. She'd also been a consort of Modigliani and Braque. Why not? She knew all these people. And Gil and she become friends. It becomes clear, though, as he is just singing the praises of this wonderful time, all these great people, and he's meeting, and aren't they wonderful? She's like, oh, well, yeah. She knows Picasso, and she knew Braque, but the wonderful time was the Paris of the Belle Epoque, the late 19th century. That's the time. He goes, what are you talking about? It's the 1920s. And she's like, yeah, well, 1920s. It was her present time, so it was uninteresting. At one point, there's a kind of dream within a dream sequence when a beautiful horse-drawn carriage from that period comes up. And then Gil and the girlfriend get in the carriage, which then takes them back to the Belle Epoque. And they meet Toulouse-Lautrec and Gauguin and Degas and all her heroes, So she's thrilled by that. But then Gauguin and Degas are talking about the Renaissance, how wonderful it was back in the Renaissance time. At which point Gil kind of gets the meaning, and we all with him get the meaning of the story, that we have this tendency not to live in the present, but always to romanticize a time in the distant past. And we tend to live there. See, here I think Woody Allen is making common cause with many of the great spiritual masters. You'll see it in the great Christian spiritual teachers that there's a danger that we live in the future. A lot of us do that. Oh, when something happens, then I'll be happy. When I'm there, when I'm married, when I'm whatever it is. Or we live in the past, as these people do. Wasn't it great in the 13th century when Thomas Aquinas was in Paris? Wasn't it great when Hemingway and Faulkner and T.S. Eliot? Wasn't it great in the Belle Epoque? And of course, the bottom line is, every period is ambiguous. You know, mind you, I think Woody Allen's trying to remind us that the same Hemingway, who did indeed write beautiful prose, was also a deeply unhappy man whose life ended in suicide. Scott Fitzgerald, who wrote some of those beautiful sentences in the 20th century, was also a hopeless alcoholic who died in destitution. Picasso, I mean, the greatest painter since Rembrandt, was also, in many ways, a terrible man, you know. Every time is ambiguous. We shouldn't look to the future and live there, or look to the past and live there, but rather live right now, because this is the time that's real, the time that's given to us, with all of its ambiguity. So we tend to see all the negativity of the present. I don't want to live in the present, it's too negative. Look, every time is negative and positive, but this is the time you've been given. And so live radically now. Make your choices now. Follow God's will now. The spiritual teachers and Woody Allen, I think, are seeing the importance of that. You know, it's wonderful how he brings it together. I won't give away the ending of the movie, but Gil at the very end says, you know, Paris really is the most beautiful in the rain. So you think of Paris on a beautiful sunny day, you're up on Montmartre looking at the skyline of the city, but actually, and Paris is, I can testify to that, is very beautiful in the rain. See, and that's the point though, is that the rain, all the negativity, all the darkness, but actually that's when things are most beautiful, when I'm living dramatically in the now.